All right, let's get to work here. Appalachian State takes on the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, 7:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff Tuesday night. Appalachian State's -3, totals 54 and a hook. And if you want to see which one of these free YouTube picks on my channel that I'm actually betting on personally, there's only one way to do that, and that's to sign up for a membership on my website at brockpage.com, where we are 3-0 in our last 3 NFL tier package picks on that website. Appalachian State's on a 3-game winning streak, 4-1 straight up overall for the season. The Mountaineers are scoring over 35 points a game, and they rank in the top 30 in passing. Chase Bryce has thrown for 1,360 yards, and he's only been sacked 5 times. Meanwhile, rushing-wise, Nate Noel is averaging over 100 yards a game on the ground. Now, they're taking on a Louisiana team who hasn't done a good job covering the number this year. They failed to cover in their last 2 straight, just 1-4 against the spread in their last 5. The Raging Cajuns also rank 115th in offensive time of possession. Now, total-wise, Louisiana's 4-1 to the under thus far in the season, 7-2 to the under in their last 9 meetings with Appy State. Give me the Appalachian State Mountaineers -3 and the under 54.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Georgia Southern versus South Alabama, 7:30 p.m. Eastern start time this Thursday. South Alabama's -3, totals 49.5. Now, South Alabama's on a 2-game losing streak, 1-3 against the number in their last 4. They also lost their last 7 straight meetings with Georgia Southern, and they rank 102nd in offensive yards per play. Georgia Southern, on the other side, loves to run the football. Logan Wright and Gerald Green, they have combined for 10 total touchdowns between the two of them. They're both also averaging over 6.7 yards a carry. Great production out of those backs. The Eagles have successfully covered the point spread in their last 3 straight, and they're rushing for over 250 yards a game. Now, total-wise, 2 out of Georgia Southern's last 3 road games got over the line. 4-2 to the over for the entire season at any location. Give me the Georgia Southern Eagles +3 and the over 49.5. Next ball game, Navy versus Memphis, 7:30 Eastern kickoff this Thursday. Memphis is -8.5, totals 52 and a hook. The Tigers are on a 3-game losing streak, 1-4 against the spread in their last 5. Now, this Tiger defense is giving up an awful lot of points. They currently rank 129th in fourth quarter points allowed. They're taking on a Navy team who successfully covered the point spread in their last 3 straight, and that actually includes an outright victory over UCF. The midshipmen are dominating in offensive time of possession due to that run-heavy offense, that option attack. They're gaining 220 yards a game on the ground. Now, total-wise, 2 out of Navy's last 3 ball games got over the number. Memphis went 2-0 to the over in their last couple of games themselves. Give me Navy +8.5 and the over 52 and a hook. Next ball game, it is going to be Marshall versus North Texas, 7 o'clock Eastern kickoff this Friday. Marshall's -11, total 64.5. The Herd's been pretty bad against the point spread this season. They failed to cover in their last 2 straight, 1-4 against the spread in their last 5. This Marshall rush defense allows over 210 yards a game on the ground. They're taking on a North Texas team who likes to run the football. They're gaining over 200 yards a game on the ground. DeAndre Torrey has rushed for 601 yards and averages 5.2 yards per carry. Now, the senior's also gaining over 120 yards a game rushing as well. The Mean Greens successfully covered the point spread in their last 2 straight. Now, total-wise, North Texas is 4-1 to the under in their last 5. Marshall saw their last 2 straight fall under the line. Give me North Texas +11 and the under 64.5. Next matchup, Clemson versus Syracuse, 7 o'clock Eastern start time this Friday. Clemson's -14 on the road, totals 45. The Tigers have failed to cover the number in all 5 of their ball games this season. The Tigers are scoring only 21 points a game. And they rank 114th in passing. It always reminds me of that meme where Dabo and DJ, they're in the charter plane and they're looking down on the stadium. And Dabo says to DJ, he goes, "Hey, look, that's you're going to be throwing a lot of touchdown passes there. That's where you're going to be throwing touchdown passes." And it hasn't been the case for DJ, unfortunately. Gotta love Dabo, though. He's great. But anyway, Clemson, they're taking on a Syracuse team who has a really good defense. And they're in the top 25 in fewest yards allowed per play. Cody Roscoe is 5.5 sacks on the season. That's a great name, Cody Roscoe. Meanwhile, Marlowe Wax has 5 sacks on the year himself. Meanwhile, offensively, Sean Tucker, the running back, he scored 9 times on the ground and averages 132 yards a game rushing. Now, Syracuse is one of the best covering teams in the country at 5-1 against the number. When it comes to the total in this one, Syracuse saw 7 out of their last 9 meetings with Clemson stay under the line. Meanwhile, the Tigers are 4-1 to the under for the entire season. Give me the Syracuse Orange plus 14 and the under 45. Next ball game, Cal, Oregon, 10:30 Eastern kickoff this Friday. Oregon's minus 14, totals 55. Oregon's coming off a tough 7-point loss to Stanford, just 1-4 against the spread overall for the season as well. Now, the Ducks are pretty banged up right now. Bunch of guys on the injury report. This Oregon defense also has really struggled to slow down the pass. They're 111th in pass defense. Now, they're taking on a Cal team who covered the number in their last 2 road games. They're also in the top 25 in first quarter scoring. Now, total-wise, Cal's 2-0 to the over when traveling. Oregon saw 2 out of their last 3 home games get over the total as well. I'm actually going to lean toward Cal plus 14 in the over 55. Next matchup, San Diego State versus San Jose State, 10:30 East this Friday. The San Diego State Aztecs are minus 8, totals 41.5. Now, the Aztecs are 5-0 thus far in the season, 4-1 against the number in those victories. The Aztecs are also in the top 15 in offensive rushing. And they're led by Greg Bell, who's averaging 5.5 yards a carry. He's also scored 5 times on the ground. Now, the senior running back's also gaining 104 yards per contest on the ground. They're taking on a San Jose State team who's one of the worst covering teams in college football. They failed to cover the number in their last 5 straight. The Spartans also struggling to move the football. They're 112th in the country in rushing, and they're averaging only 20 points a game. Now, when it comes to the number in this one, the Spartans saw their last 2 straight get over the total. San Diego State's 3-1 to the over in their last 4 themselves. Give me San Diego State minus 8 and the over 41 and a hook. Next ball game. It is going to be Florida versus LSU, 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff this Saturday. Florida's minus 10, totals 59.5. But as good as Florida's looked offensively, they've actually failed to cover the number in their last 2 straight on the road. And of course, with these rivalry games, these in-conference games, especially in the SEC, laying double digits on the road is a mighty tall order no matter what your record is. It does not matter what the records are in this particular spot. Now, the Tigers on the other side of LSU, they're throwing the ball all over the field. They're in the top 20 in passing, and they're led by quarterback Max Johnson, who's thrown for 1,730 yards along with 17 touchdowns. Wide receiver Keyshawn Boutte, he's caught 9 touchdown passes already and has 509 yards receiving on the year. Now, defensively, despite struggling in a few areas, the Tigers are still in the top 20 in fewest first quarter points allowed. When it comes to the total in this one, 2 out of LSU's last 3 ball games fell under the number. Meanwhile, Florida went 4-0 to the under in their last 4 themselves. I'm going to lean toward LSU plus 10, keeping it close, and the under 59.5. Next contest, Michigan State versus Indiana, 12 p.m. Eastern start. Sparty's minus 4.5, totals 51. The undefeated Spartans are one of the better covering teams in the nation, 5-1 against the number in their 6 victories on the year. The Spartans are in the top 5 in offensive yards per play, and of course they're led by Kenneth Walker III, who's gained 912 yards already on the ground, along with 9 touchdowns. Now, the junior's averaging over 7 yards a carry and 152 yards a game rushing. Meanwhile, defensively on the other side of the ball, Michigan State is giving up only 19 points a game. Now, they're taking on an Indiana team who goes to work without quarterback Michael Penix. The Hoosiers failed to cover the number in their last 3 straight, and they've been pretty bad offensively. Indiana's 116th in the country in offensive yards per play, so even when Michael Penix was healthy and playing, they still weren't moving the ball all that much, so I don't know, maybe it'll help them. Who knows? But anyway, total-wise, 3 out of Indiana's last 4 ball games got over the total. 70% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Michigan State. I'm going to lean towards Sparty, minus 4.5, and the over 51. Next ball game, Tulsa USF, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Tulsa's minus 8.5, totals 57. The Golden Hurricane won 2 out of their last 3. And that includes a 6-point win over Memphis this past weekend. Tulsa's actually done a really nice job throwing the football. Davis Brin has thrown for over 1,600 yards, along with 8 touchdowns. They're taking on a South Florida team who allows 36 points a game, and they rank 127th in yards allowed per play. Their defense has been an absolute mess. The Bulls are just 1-4 straight up overall for the season. And when it comes to the total in this one, USF's 2-0 to the over at Raymond James Stadium. Tulsa's 2-0 to the over when they travel. I'm going to lean toward Tulsa, minus 8.5 in the over 57. Next ball game, not on my big screen behind me, but it is going to be Yale versus Yukon, 12 o'clock East. This game's currently off the board. Yukon lost to Holy Cross by 10. Yale lost to Holy Cross by just 3. I'm going to lean toward Yale plus the points when that line eventually comes out. Next ball game, not on our board. Texas A&M versus Missouri, 12 o'clock Eastern start time. The Aggies are minus 8.5, total 60 and a hook. Despite let's try that again. Despite an historic win over Alabama this past weekend, I'm fearful of a can't get the words out because I'm so hyped up. I'm so amped up about this game. It has nothing to do with a clear speech impediment. It's got to be, right? Or maybe my brain just moves too fast. But anyway, let's start again. Despite an historic win over Alabama this past weekend, I'm fearful of a big letdown spot for Aggies backers here. This banged-up Texas A&M team failed to cover in their last 2 away from home. They also ranked 93rd in fourth quarter scoring. They're taking on a Missouri program who's 3-1 straight up at home, and they rank in the top 25 in pass yards per game. Connor Bazelak has thrown for nearly 1,700 yards along with a dozen scores. Meanwhile, running back Tyler Beatty has scored 8 times already. Beatty scored already. He scored 8 times already on the ground and averages 6.5 yards per carry. The senior running back's also averaging $113 rushing a game. Total-wise, Missouri's 5-1 to the over for the entire season, 3-1 to the over on their home field. Give me Missouri plus 8.5, keeping this one close. And the over 60 and a hook. Actually, these games have been on the screen. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know why I skipped them. But anyway, next ball game. It is going to be UCF versus Cincinnati, 12 o'clock East. Cincinnati's minus 19.5, numbers 57 and a hook. Now, the undefeated Bearcats have covered in their last 3 straight. Top 10 in the country in scoring on average per game. Desmond Ritter's thrown for over 1,300 yards and scored 15 total touchdowns. Meanwhile, defensively, the Bearcats allow only 12 points a game. They rank in the top 10 in fewest yards allowed per play. Now, Pace, Gardner, and Bush, they each have a pair of interceptions for this defense. Deshaun Pace is also leading the team with 40 total tackles. Now, they're taking on a UCF team who lost their starting quarterback to injury, and they failed to cover in their last 3 straight. UCF's allowing nearly 28 points per contest, and they're 96th in fourth quarter points allowed. Now, total-wise, 4 out of UCF's last 6 meetings with Cincinnati stayed under the number. Meanwhile, 2 out of the Bearcats' last 4 ball games fell under the total as well. I'm going to lean toward Cincinnati minus 19.5, and the under 57.5. Next ball game, Rutgers Northwestern, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Rutgers is -1, totals 47. Now, Rutgers is 2-0 against the spread away from home this year. Just 13 points a game they gave up in those two covers. Olakunle Fatukasi has 52 total tackles and 3.5 sacks. He's taking on a Northwestern team who struggles to move the football, so he could potentially have a field day. Probably going to have a lot of tackles here. Now, Northwestern is throwing for just 190 yards a game. They average only 22 points per contest. The Wildcats are currently 122nd in second quarter scoring. Now, when it comes to the number in this one, oddly enough, 2 out of Northwestern's last 3 ball games did manage to get over the number. Meanwhile, 2 out of Rutgers' last 4 got over the total themselves. Give me Rutgers -1. The over 47. Next ball game, Nebraska versus Minnesota, 12 o'clock East. Nebraska is -3, totals 48. Now, the Cornhuskers have been really good against the number here this year. They're 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 ball games. And they currently rank in the top 20 in offensive yards per play. Quarterback Adrian Martinez has thrown 9 touchdown passes. And he's also rushed it in 10 times. That's 19 total touchdowns for Martinez. Meanwhile, defensively, Deontay Williams has 3 interceptions and 39 tackles from the secondary. Now, linebacker Nick Heinrich, he leads the club with 58 total tackles. This Nebraska defense allows only 17 points a game. They're the best 3 and 4 team out there, if that means anything. But anyway, they're taking on a Minnesota squad who lost 2 out of their last 3 at home. Minnesota's passing game is essentially non-existent. Tanner Morgan's completing a pitiful 52% of his passes, and he throws for a measly 141 yards a game. I don't know what happened to him this year. Minnesota's leading wideout, he averages just 33 yards a game receiving. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, the Gophers are 113th in the country in yards allowed per play at home. Now, total-wise, Minnesota's last 3 straight fell under the number. Nebraska's 2-0 to the under on the road this year themselves. Give me Nebraska -3 in the under 48. All right, next ball game, for some reason, not on our big screen. Now, this one's definitely not on our big screen. I didn't see it earlier today. I don't know why I was skipping a couple games here. But next game is important. It's going to be one a lot of people are looking at. Auburn versus Arkansas, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Arkansas is -3.5, totals 53. The Razorbacks are on a 2-game losing streak. 89 total points combined they gave up in those losses. This Razorback defense allows over 180 yards a game on the ground. And they rank 88th in fourth quarter points allowed. They're taking on an Auburn team who won 2 out of their last 3 themselves. And they rush for over 205 yards a game. Jarquez Hunter and Tank Bigsby, they've combined for over 900 yards rushing already, along with 8 combined touchdowns. Hunter's averaging a staggering 9.9 yards a carry. Meanwhile, defensively, the Tigers allow just 19 points a game. When it comes to the total in this one, Arkansas is 4-2 to the over for the entire season, 3-0 to the over in their last 3 at home. Give me Auburn +3.5 in the over 53 points. Next ball game, another one not on the big screen, but it is going to be Ohio versus Buffalo, 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff. Buffalo's -9, totals 56.5. The Bulls are 3-0 against the spread at home, and they're gaining 210 yards a game on the ground. Now, they've got a trio of running backs who have over 300 yards rushing apiece. They're taking on a 1-5 Ohio team who scores just 19 points a game and throws for just $156. Now, total-wise, Ohio's last 3 straight all fell under the number. Meanwhile, Buffalo saw 2 out of their last 3 home games stay under the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Buffalo -9 and the under 56.5. Next contest should be a good one. Oklahoma State versus Texas, 12 o'clock Eastern start time. Texas is -5.5, total 60.5. The Longhorns are giving up nearly 30 points a game and over 200 yards a game on the ground. Their defense ranks 116th in yards allowed per play. They're taking on an undefeated Oklahoma State team who gives up only 18 points a game themselves. Malcolm Rodriguez has 2 forced fumbles, a scoop and score, and 54 total tackles for the Cowboys. Meanwhile, rushing-wise, Jalen Warren scored 6 times and averages over 100 yards a game. Now, when it comes to the scoring in this one, Texas saw 2 out of their last 3 home games get over the line. 4 wanted the over in their last 5 ball games at any location. Give me Oklahoma State plus 5.5 in the over 60 and a hook. Next ball game, Duke versus Virginia, 12:30 East. Virginia's minus 11, total 68. The Cavaliers are giving up 29 points a game and over 200 yards a game rushing. Their defense ranks 114th in yards allowed per play. They're taking on a Duke team who ranks in the top 20 in rushing. Mateo Durant, he scored 9 times on the ground, and he's averaging over 131 yards a game rushing. That guy might be playing on Sunday in a couple of years. Now, total-wise, Duke saw their last 2 road games stay under the line. Meanwhile, Virginia's 5-1 to the under for the entire season themselves. 3-0 to the under at home. Give me Duke plus 11 in the under 68. Next matchup, Ball State versus Eastern Michigan, 2 o'clock Eastern kickoff. Ball State's minus 2.5, totals 54 and a hook. Ball State's lost 2 out of their last 3 road games, 2-4 against the number overall for the season. The Cardinals rank 112th in offensive yards per play. They're taking on an Eastern Michigan team who's 3-0 straight up at home, and they gave up just 16 points per contest in those victories. David Carter Jr. has a pair of interceptions from this secondary. Meanwhile, Tarek Spates has 32 total tackles on the year himself. The Eagles are in the top 30 in the country in fewest fourth quarter points allowed at home. When it comes to the total in this one, Eastern Michigan is 2-0 to the under in their last couple of games. Ball State's 4-2 to the under for the entire season themselves. I'm going to lean toward Eastern Michigan plus 2.5 in the under 54 and a hook. All right, guys, I've been doing it each and every week. We take a little bit of a timeout. So what I use here, I know a lot of people ask, I use the sports app on Xfinity. And basically what's behind me is just a big television. It's just a big flat screen. So I tend to I'll pause it on the music choice stations because typically they have a neutral background. By the way, Duran Duran, great band. The Reflex is an incredible song. If you've never heard it, it's going back a long time, but it's a wonderful tune. Good tune to dance to, that's for sure. But anyway, maybe you want a few cocktails in you before you do that. But it's easier to dance to this song that way. But anyway, the Xfinity app, when I try to pause it, it only pauses for like 25 minutes and then it starts playing again. So that's why the screen's changing in the background. So if you don't mind, I apologize for stopping the video. But I gotta fix this. I don't know what else to tell you. I gotta fix it. So we're gonna hit the live button. It's gonna fast forward. Let's see who we got coming up here. Is it Duran Duran again? I don't know. Maybe I'm not technically savvy, as you can tell. So maybe we're just going to have to deal with the changing screen in the background. That'll be super annoying and distracting. Or maybe it's just going to go away. Who knows? But anyway, let's go ahead and move on. Our next game, not on our big screen again, but definitely some important games. The Xfinity app, they don't list all the games all the time. But anyway, next game, Akron versus Miami, Ohio, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, Miami's minus 20, totals 53.5. The Miami Redhawks failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4 ball games. They're 108th in the country in scoring on average per game. They're taking on an Akron team who just upset Bowling Green by the final of 35-20. The Zips are in the top 15 in offensive time of possession. When it comes to the total on this one, 2 out of Akron's last 3 road games got over the number. Give me Akron plus 20 and the over 53.5. Next ball game, Troy versus Texas State, 3 p.m. East. Troy's -7, totals 49.5. The Trojans have been playing some really good defense this year. Top 10 in fewest yards allowed per play. Harris, Jabuner, and Williams, they all have a pair of interceptions apiece. Meanwhile, Javon Solomon's leading the FBS in sacks. The freshman from Tallahassee has 7.5 sacks on the year, along with an interception. There's really not much the guy can't do. The Trojans give up just 95 yards a game rushing. They're taking on a Texas club who lost 2 out of their last 3 at home, and they allow 36 points a game. Now, total-wise, the Bobcats' last 3 straight all got over the number. I'm going to lean toward Troy -7 and the over 49.5. All right, next ball game, BYU versus Baylor, 3:30 p.m. Eastern start time. Baylor's -4.5, totals 49. Now, Baylor hasn't lost a game yet at home. 5-1 straight up overall for this season. They've also successfully covered the point spread in 4 out of their last 5 as well. The Bears are in the top 10 in offensive yards per play. Abram Smith has gained 597 yards on the ground through 6 ball games, 7 rushing touchdowns already, along with 7.7 yards per carry he's averaging. Baylor's gaining over 225 yards a game on the ground. Meanwhile, defensively, they give up just 175 yards a game passing, and they're only allowing 17 points a game. This is going to be a tough test for BYU. We're looking at a BYU team who failed to cover in 2 out of their last 3. They're also coming fresh off a 9-point loss to Boise State, and they're also 116th in third quarter scoring. Now, total-wise, Baylor's 4-2 to the over for the entire season, 3-0 to the over on their home field. Give me Baylor -4.5 and the over 49. Next matchup, Purdue versus Iowa, 3:30 p.m. East. Iowa's -11.5, totals 43 and a hook. The undefeated Hawkeyes have gone 5-1 against the spread in their 6 victories. Their defense allows just 13 points a game, and they rank in the top 5 in fewest yards allowed per play. Riley Moss leads the country with 3 interceptions. I don't think that's right, but he's got 3 interceptions, 23 total. Actually, he's got 4 interceptions, doesn't he? I don't know who's feeding me these stats here, but I'm pretty positive that Riley Moss has 4 interceptions. I'm just going to throw that out there. He's got either 3 interceptions or more. Let's just put it that way. 23 total tackles and a pair of pick sixes for Moss, by the way. Meanwhile, Jack Campbell, he has 55 total tackles, a pair of fumble recoveries, as well as a scoop and score. Very advantageous defense is Iowa. Now, they're taking on a Purdue team who failed to cover the number in their last 3 straight. The Boilermakers have shown little interest in running the football this year. They're gaining just 89 yards a game on the ground. When it comes to the scoring in this one, Purdue's gone 5-0 to the under thus far in the season. Iowa's seen 3 out of their last 4 at Kinnick Stadium stay under the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Iowa -11.5 and the under 43 and a hook. Little bit of a tight window there, but I think we can get the job done. All right. Great song, by the way. Pump Up the Jam. I'm going to be so distracted by the screen behind me, by the way. Just flipping. But anyway, Kent State, Western Michigan, 3:30 p.m. East. Western Michigan's -7, total 64.5. The Broncos failed to cover in their last 2 straight. They're 99th in the country in offensive yards per play. Even worse than that, the Broncos are 112th in third quarter scoring. They're taking on a Kent State team who's on a 2-game winning streak and gains 240 yards a game on the ground. When it comes to the total in this one, Kent State's 5-1 at the under for the entire season, 3-0 to the under in their last 3 road games. Meanwhile, their opponents saw 2 out of their last 3 home games fall under the line, 4-2 to the under overall for the year. I'm going to lean toward Kent State +7 and the under 64.5. Next ball game, Kentucky versus Georgia, 3:30 Eastern start time. Georgia's -24, totals 44.5. But as dominant as Georgia's been, this is truly an absurdly large number in this spot here. They also failed to cover the number at home against South Carolina earlier in the season, so it is possible. The Bulldogs are a little bit banged up as well, and they've got a slew of guys on that injury report. Now they're taking on an undefeated Kentucky squad who beat the likes of LSU, Missouri, and Florida this year, so they're beating good teams. The Wildcats have successfully covered the point spread in their last 3 straight, 5-1 against the spread overall for the season, so they're cashing in tickets too. This Kentucky defense allows just 17 points a game, and they rank in the top 15 in yards allowed per play. DeAndre Square has a pair of sacks and 46 total tackles for the Wildcats. Meanwhile, offensively, running back Chris Rodriguez Jr. is gaining 127 yards a game on the ground. Now, total-wise, Kentucky's 4-2 to the over thus far in the season. Georgia saw 2 out of their last 3 home games get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Kentucky plus 24 in the over 44.5. Next matchup, Toledo, Central Michigan, 3:30 p.m. East. Toledo's minus 4.5, numbers 51. Toledo's won 2 out of their last 3 ball games, and they're really anchored by their defense. The Rockets are giving up just 17 points per contest, and they're in the top 15 in fewest pass yards allowed per game. Jamal Hines has 2.5 sacks, 4 PBUs, and 41 total tackles for Toledo. This Rocket defense is in the top 15 in the country in fewest yards allowed per play. They're taking on a Central Michigan team who's been terrible against the number lately, 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 straight. They've also lost 9 out of their last 10 ball games against Toledo. And their defense is 109th in pass yards allowed per game. I'm going to lean toward the Toledo Rockets minus 4.5 in the over 51. Next matchup should be a really good ball game here. I'm talking about Pittsburgh versus Virginia Tech. 3:30 Eastern kickoff. Pitt's minus 5, totals 57. But as good as Pitt's offense has been this season, they've kind of been beaten up on cupcakes such as New Hampshire and UMass. And as a matter of fact, they gave up 44 points to Western Michigan in a loss. Now they're taking on a Virginia Tech team who's really tough to beat in Blacksburg. They play the Enter Sandman song, Everybody Gets Fired Up, which I don't understand why they play Enter Sandman. I know that's something they did, but why did they choose to play Enter Sandman? Did it just happen all of a sudden? Or why is Enter Sandman the song? I'll tell you what, it's cool, it's exciting, it gets everybody jazzed up, but did the lead singer go to Virginia Tech, or maybe Lars was the drummer, right? Did he live in Blacksburg or grow up? I don't know. I don't see the connection between the two. But if you know, let me know in the comment section below. But anyway, the Hokies, they're tough to beat in Blacksburg, especially when they play Enter Sandman. The Hokies are allowing just 18 points a game, and they're led by Jermaine Waller, who's got 4 interceptions and 26 total tackles on the year. Alan Tisdale also has 39 tackles on the season as well. The Hokies are in the top 25 in fewest fourth quarter points allowed. And when it comes to the number in this one, 3 out of the Hokies' last 4 home games fell under the total. I'm going to lean toward Virginia Tech plus 5 in the under 57. Next matchup, not on the big screen, but it is going to be Arizona versus Colorado. Ooh, that should be a good one. 3:30 p.m. Eastern start time. Colorado's minus 7, totals 44.5. The Buffs are allowing just 21 points a game at home, so they're playing some pretty good defense in the friendly confines, if you will. Nate Landman, he leads the team with 46 total tackles. They're taking on a winless Arizona team who scores only 16 points a game and ranks 114th in yards gained per play. Now, total-wise, 3 out of Arizona's last 4 contests away from home stayed under the line. Meanwhile, Colorado's 4-1 at the under for the entire season themselves, 3-0 to the under at home, giving me Colorado minus 7 and the under 44.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Bowling Green versus Northern Illinois. Time for some action. 3:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Are they playing the MAC during the week anymore? They used to be playing every Tuesday and Wednesday. I haven't seen them yet. But anyway, Northern Illinois minus 9, numbers 49. The Huskies are on a 3-game winning streak, 5-1 against the spread overall for the season. The Huskies have a really good ground game, top 20 in the country in rush yards per game. Harrison Whaley's gained 574 yards rushing already, along with 4 scores. The running back's averaging nearly 6 yards per contest. Keep an eye on him. He is banged up. Keep an eye on his status. They are taking on a Bowling Green team who's on a 2-game losing streak and has done a really poor job running the football. The Falcons are 123rd in offensive yards per play, and they gain just 57 yards a game on the ground. I'm going to lean toward NIU -9 in the over 49. Next game, Fresno State versus Wyoming, 3:30 p.m. Eastern start. Fresno's -3.5, totals 56. The Bulldogs won 3 out of their last 4 ball games, 4-2 against the number overall for the season. Fresno's bread and butter is their passing game, top 3 in the country in pass yards per game, nearly 40 points a game they're averaging as well. Jake Haener has thrown for over 2,200 yards, along with 18 touchdowns. Wide receiver Jalen Cropper has 528 total receiving yards and 9 scores. Meanwhile, defensively, Fresno State is holding their opponents to just 190 yards a game passing. Now, they're taking on a Wyoming team who doesn't throw the ball all too well, 111th in the country in pass offense. The Cowboys have failed to cover the number in their last 2 straight, 1-4 against the spread in their last 5. When it comes to the total in this one, 2 out of Wyoming's last 4 ball games got over the number. Fresno's 3-1 to the over in their last 4. Give me Fresno -3.5 in the over 55 and a hook. Real quick, I think I told you I was going to be distracted by the thing. I knew it. I knew I saw a picture of the B-52s. I'll tell you what, the B-52s, when I was a kid, real young, my family, obviously my parents and my brother, we would go over to the Willis's house. Big Jeff Willis. If you're out there watching, shout out to Big Jeff and the Jaybird. But anyway, we would go to the Willis's house on Saturday night. People would be drinking beer, dancing, partying, and this was the hot song. Everybody would lose their absolute mind when the Love Shack would come on. And then I guess at like 12 o'clock, the Mike Tyson pay-per-view would come on and we'd watch him knock somebody out. But anyway, B-52's The Love Shack. Immediately, when I hear that, brings me right to the childhood. I mean, just clear as day. But anyway, guys, next matchup, Miami versus UNC, 3:30 p.m. Eastern start time. UNC's -7, total 62.5. Despite some bad losses over the past couple of weeks, the Tar Heels still play well in Chapel Hill. They're 3-1 straight up as the home team, 3-1 against the number in those contests. The Tar Heels are in the top 15 in offensive yards per play. Sam Howell's thrown for nearly 1,700 yards and 16 touchdowns. His favorite target's been Josh Downs, who has 7 touchdown grabs and averages 124 yards a game. Now, the Tar Heels are scoring 36 points per contest. They're taking on a Miami squad who just isn't built for a track meet right now. This Miami offense is 109th in fourth quarter scoring. When it comes to the number in this one, Miami's 4-1 to the under overall for the season. Meanwhile, UNC saw their last 2 straight fall under the total themselves. Give me UNC -7 in the under 62.5. Next ball game, UAB versus Southern Miss, 3:30 p.m. East. UAB's -16, totals 43. The Blazers have won 3 out of their last 4 ball games, 3-1 against the spread in those 4 contests. This UAB defense allows just 22 points a game. They're led by Noah Wilder, who has 28 total tackles and an interception. And speaking of turnovers, the Blazers have 11 takeaways thus far in the defense. They're taking on a Southern Miss team who scores less than 6. They score just 16 points a game, and they rush for less than 95 yards per contest. The Golden Eagles currently rank 127th in offensive yards per play. When it comes to the total in this one, Southern Miss is 5-1 to the under overall for the season, 3-0 to the under in their last 3 at home. Meanwhile, UAB's gone 5-1 to the under for the entire year themselves. Give me UAB -16 and the under 43 in the tight window. Next game, Western Kentucky versus Old Dominion, 3:30 p.m. East. Western Kentucky's minus 13, total 67.5. Western Kentucky's on a 4-game losing streak and has one of the worst defenses in college football. They're allowing nearly 39 points a game and ranks 118th in rush yards allowed per contest. They're taking on an Old Dominion team who certainly likes to run the football themselves. Just about 180 yards a game they're gaining on the ground. Now, the Monarchs have also successfully covered the point spread in 2 out of their last 3. Now, total-wise, 3 out of Old Dominion's last 4 ball games got over the number. Meanwhile, Western Kentucky's 5-0 to the over for the entire season themselves. I'm going to lean toward Old Dominion plus 13 and the over 67.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Texas Tech versus Kansas, 4 o'clock Eastern kickoff. Texas Tech is minus 16.5, number 67. The Red Raiders like to air it out. No surprise there. They're in the top 10 in offensive yards per play. Eric Ezekanma and Kalen Geiger, they have over 840 combined receiving yards between the two of them. Kind of a double trouble there. Double threat. Texas Tech throws for over 300 yards a game. They're taking on a Kansas program who's 0-5 against the spread and allows 44 points a game. Give me Texas Tech minus 16.5 and the over 67. Next one, Vandy, South Carolina, 4 o'clock Eastern start time. South Carolina's minus 18.5, totals 51. The Gamecocks are a little banged up right now. They also lost 3 out of their last 4 ball games. That said, though, the Gamecocks are still 4-2 against the spread overall for the season. They're in the top 15 in pass defense. Jalen Foster has 4 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles, along with a pair of sacks from the secondary. Meanwhile, Brad Johnson's got a couple of sacks and 38 total tackles as well. They're taking on a Vandy team who scores just 13 points a game, and they're 1-5 against the spread overall for the season. Now, total-wise, Vandy's 2-0 to the under on the road. South Carolina's 3-0 to the under at home. I'm going to lean towards South Carolina, minus 18.5 and the under 51. Next contest, Rice versus UTSA, 6 o'clock East. The Texas San Antonio Roadrunners are minus 18.5, totals 54 and a hook. The undefeated Roadrunners are one of the best covering teams in the country right now, 5-1 against the spread in their 6 victories thus far in the year. They've got a high-powered passing attack that averages 38 points a game. Joshua Cephas and Zach Franklin, they have combined for over 900 receiving yards together. Meanwhile, rushing-wise, Sincere McCormick's he scored 6 times on the ground and averages over 110 yards a game. Now, defensively, the Roadrunners are in the top 10 in rush defense. They're taking on a Rice program who's averaging just 19 points a game and failed to cover in 4 out of their last 5 ball games. Now, total-wise, Rice is 4-1 to the over on the season, 2-0 to the over when they travel. I'm going to lean toward UTSA. Minus 18.5 and the over 54 and a hook. Next game, Utah State, UNLV, 7 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Utah State's minus 6, totals 59. As bad as the Aggies have looked over the past couple of weeks, they're still 2-0 straight up on the road, and they rank in the top 15 in passing. Devin Tompkins has 4 touchdown grabs and averages 107 yards a game receiving. Now, real quick, the reason why this line is so low is that starting quarterback Logan Bonner, he's struggling with a knee injury, and he's questionable for Saturday. That's why I think this line is so small. But Bonner or not, the Aggies are going up against a winless UNLV squad who scores only 18 points a game. Now, the Running Rebels are also 119th in offensive yards per play, really struggling to move the football. Meanwhile, defensively, the Rebels are allowing over 36 points a game and over 300 yards a game passing. They might not be able to beat Bishop Gorman right now. But anyway, the Rebels saw 3 out of their last 4 contests stay under the line. Meanwhile, Utah State went 2-0 to the under in their last couple of outings themselves. Give me Utah State minus 6 and the under 59. Next game, Bama, Mississippi State, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Alabama's minus 17, totals 57 and a hook. Of course, the Crimson Tide allowed 41 to Texas A&M in a loss Saturday. They also failed to cover the number in 3 out of their last 5. They're taking on a Mississippi State team who won 2 out of their last 3 at home. They really like to throw the football. Will Rogers is completing 76% of his passes, and he's thrown for nearly 1,900 yards already. He's thrown 14 touchdown passes and only 2 picks. Meanwhile, defensively, the Bulldogs are in the top 10 in rush defense. And when it comes to the total in this one, Mississippi State saw 3 out of their last 4 ball games stay under the line. Meanwhile, Bama's 4-2 to the under thus far in the season themselves. Give me Mississippi State plus 17 and the under 57.5. Next ball game, Colorado State versus New Mexico, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Colorado State's minus 10, numbers 44.5. The Rams have won 2 out of their last 3 ball games, 3-0 against the spread during that span. The Rams are in the top 25 in rush defense. Daquan Jackson has 47 total tackles for Colorado State. Patchen and Kamara, they have 3.5 sacks apiece as well. Now they're taking on a New Mexico squad who failed to cover the number in all 6 of their ball games this year. The Lobos are scoring just 15 points a game. They rank 124th in offensive yards per play. Now, total-wise, 3 out of New Mexico's last 4 ball games fell under the number. Meanwhile, Colorado State went 3-1 at the under in their last 4 themselves. Give me Colorado State minus 10 and the under 44.5. Next matchup, Liberty versus UL Monroe, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Liberty's minus 32, totals 56.5. Now, this is a huge number. But the 5-1 Liberty Flames have gone 5-1 against the point spread in those ball games. The Flames allow just 14 points a game, and they rank in the top 10 in yards allowed per play. Fewest yards allowed per play. Story Jackson has 42 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and an interception from that linebacker spot. Liberty holds their opponents to just 164 passing yards per game. Now they're taking on a UL Monroe team who ranks 123rd in offensive passing themselves. The Warhawks are on a 2-game losing streak, and they average only 15 points per contest. Now, when it comes to the total in this one, I'm not so sure the Warhawks can score enough to help put this one over. 2 out of their last 3 home games stayed under the line. Meanwhile, Liberty's 5-1 to the under on the season themselves, 3-0 to the under on the road. I'm going to lean toward Liberty minus 32 and the under 56.5. Once again, real tight window there. All right, next ball game, Stanford versus Washington State, 7:30 p.m. Eastern start time. Stanford's minus 2, totals 51.5. The Cardinal lost 2 out of their last 3 ball games. Good amount of guys on that injury report, by the way. Now, offensively, the Cardinal rushes for only 98 yards a game. Now, defensively, on the other side of the ball, they rank 123rd in rush defense, really having a tough time stopping the run. Now, Washington State, on the other side, they're on a 2-game winning streak themselves, 3-0 against the spread in their last 3 as well. Calvin Jackson and Travell Harris, they have nearly 800 yards receiving between the 2 of them. I'm going to lean toward Washington State plus 2 and the over 51.5. Next ball game, TCU versus Oklahoma, 7:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Oklahoma's minus 11.5, total 65. But as good as these guys have been, they've found some difficulty in covering the number. They failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4 ball games. Meanwhile, defensively, they're 108th in pass defense. They're taking on a sneaky TCU team who can definitely put up some points. They're averaging nearly 39 points a game, and they rush for over 235 yards per contest as well. Zach Evans has rushed for 586 yards, along with 5 scores. The sophomore running back is averaging nearly 8 yards per touch. Now, total-wise, 3 out of the Horned Frogs' last 4 ball games got over the total. Meanwhile, Oklahoma saw their last 2 straight get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward TCU plus 11.5 and the over 65. Next matchup, Iowa State versus Kansas State, 7:30 p.m. East. Iowa State's -6.5, totals 52. The Cyclones won 2 out of their last 3 ball games. They've done a real nice job moving the football. Iowa State's currently in the top 25 in offensive yards per play. And they're led by running back Breece Hall, who's gaining over 110 yards a game and scored 8 times on the ground. Meanwhile, defensively, the Cyclones are in the top 5 in fewest yards allowed per play. They're giving up only 144 yards a game through the air. Now they're taking on a Kansas State team who lost their last 2 straight, and they also rank 102nd in passing. I like Iowa State -6.5 and the under 52. Next ball game, NC State versus Boston College, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. NC State's -3, totals 51. The Wolfpack failed to cover in 2 out of their last 4. They've also gone just 3-7 against the spread in their last 10 meetings with Boston College. And speaking of the Eagles, they're 3-0 against the spread in their last 3 straight, 4-1 against the number overall for the season. This Eagle defense allows just 16 points a game, and they've got 6 interceptions. Isaiah Graham Mobley leads the defense with 36 total tackles. When it comes to the number in this one, Boston College saw 2 out of their last 3 ball games fall under the line. They're also 7-3 to the under in their last 10 meetings with the Wolfpack. Give me Boston College +3 and the under 51. Next matchup, Ole Miss versus Tennessee, 7:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Ole Miss is -3, total 79.5. Ole Miss failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4 ball games, 2-5 straight up in their last 7 meetings with Tennessee. This is a team they struggle with. This Rebel defense is allowing 31 points a game. They're taking on a Volunteer squad who scores 42 a game themselves, and they also rush for over 250 yards per contest as well. Tyon Evans has scored 6 times on the ground and averages nearly 7 yards a carry. Meanwhile, defensively, the Vols are in the top 15 in fewest first quarter points allowed. Now, when it comes to the scoring, this number is outrageous considering how solid Tennessee's defense has played over the past couple of weeks. Meanwhile, Ole Miss is 2-0 to the under in their games away from home. I know that's a square play. I can't take the over here. Give me Tennessee +3 and the under 79.5. Next ball game. It is going to be Army versus Wisconsin, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Wisconsin's -13, totals 40.5. But as bad as Wisconsin has looked, I just can't see them falling victim to Army. They've got the #1 rush defense in the country, which is perfect going up against an Army team who runs the ball 100 times a game. They're going to need to play good rush defense. Matter of fact, they have been. Wisconsin's holding their opponents to just 41 rush yards a game. Jack Sandberg could possibly have 20 tackles in this game alone. Now, the Badgers are taking on an Army team who failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4. And simply put, a one-dimensional attack against a team like Wisconsin is just not going to get the job done. And they're not strong enough. I'm telling you, it's a huge number, but I don't like Army in this spot. Now, the Black Knights also rank 100th in fourth quarter points allowed. Total-wise, Army's 3-2 to the over thus far in the season. Wisconsin saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the line as well. Give me Wisconsin -13 and the over 40.5. Next ball game, UCLA, Washington, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Washington Huskies are -2, totals 53. Washington failed to cover in their last 2 straight, 1-4 against the number in their last 5. The Huskies rank 104th in rushing, 126th in third quarter scoring. They're taking on a UCLA team who allows just 92 yards a game on the ground. Meanwhile, offensively, Zach Charbonnet is averaging nearly 6.5 yards a carry, and he scored 7 times on the ground. Now, the combination of Charbonnet and Brown in this backfield, they've combined for over 1,000 yards rushing already between the two of them. Now, total-wise, UCLA's 2-0 to the under on the road. Washington's 4-1 to the under for the entire season. This line stinks. It really does. But it's probably a trap game. But give me UCLA +2 and the under 53. Next matchup, Air Force, Boise, 9 o'clock Eastern kickoff. The Boise State Broncos are -5 on the Smurf turf. Totals 51. And speaking of the Smurf turf, Boise lost 2 out of their last 3 this season there on the blue turf. And they're allowing over 180 yards a game defensively. It's certainly a bad formula for success against Air Force as they're leading the country in rush yards per game. The Falcons are gaining over 340 yards a game on the ground. They do run the ball 1,000 times a game. I get that. They're also 5-1 straight up on the season, and they successfully covered the point spread in their last 3 straight. Now, defensively, on the other side of the ball, Air Force is in the top 15 in rush yards allowed per game. 6 out of these teams' last 9 meetings did manage to get over the number. Meanwhile, 2 out of Boise's last 3 contests at Albertson Stadium got over the line. I'm going to lean toward Air Force, +5 in the over 51. Next ball game, Louisiana Tech versus Utep, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Louisiana Tech's -7, totals 55. The Bulldogs are 0-2 against the number when laying the points, and they've got serious problems on defense. They're giving up over 33 points a game and 320 yards a game passing. They're taking on a Utep squad who just grinds it out and controls the football. The Miners are in the top 15 in offensive time of possession. Meanwhile, defensively, Utep allows just 94 rush yards a game. Tyrese Knight and Brian Hayward each have 40 tackles apiece. The 5-1 Miners have successfully covered the number in their last 3 straight. Total-wise, 2 out of Utep's last 3 home games got over the number. Meanwhile, Tech's 4-1 to the over for the entire season themselves. Give me Utep +7 in the over 55. Next matchup, Arizona State versus Utah, 10 o'clock Eastern start time. Arizona State's -1, totals 51. The Sun Devils are on a 3-game winning streak, 3-0 against the spread in those victories. Meanwhile, offensively, they're in the top 15 in yards per play. Now, on the other side of the ball, these guys are allowing only 16 points per contest. Darian Butler and Jack Jones, they have 2 interceptions apiece from the secondary. Meanwhile, Kyle Sowell has 39 tackles from that linebacker spot. The Sun Devils are taking on a Utah team who's had a tough time covering the number this season. The Utes are just 1-4 against the spread through 5 ball games. The Utes have also struggled with Arizona State in recent meetings, just 3-6 straight up in their last 9 contests against Arizona State. Now, total-wise, 2 out of Utah's last 3 ball games got over the line. Arizona State saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Arizona State +1 and the over 51. And with that, guys, now it's time for our next and final matchup for the show. Who the hell is that? Michael Cimbello. Oh, Maniac. Yeah, man, he looks like a maniac. Probably a nice guy, though. I shouldn't say that. Really mean and judgy. I'm ashamed. But he caught me off guard. But anyway, I like the beard, though. Hawaii versus Nevada, 10:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Nevada's -14, numbers 59 and a hook. Nevada's on a 2-game winning streak, top 10 in the country in passing. Carson Strong's thrown for nearly 1,600 yards, along with 14 touchdowns. The Wolfpack's in the top 3 in the nation in third quarter scoring. They're taking on a Hawaii team who struggles once they get off the island. They've lost 2 of 3 away from home. And they've also dropped 7 out of their last 10 meetings with Nevada. They can beat anyone on the island, by the way. I'm not discrediting them. But when they travel far, and it's tough for them. Now, this Warrior defense is going to be in real trouble with Carson Strong. They're 119th in the nation in pass defense. The Wolfpack's 4-0 to the over in their last 4 straight. Give me Nevada -14 and the over 59 and a hook. And with that, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap. Powered to you by my website at brockpage.com, where we actually went 3-0 in our last 3 NFL tier package picks on that website. I like Appalachian State -3 under 54.5. Georgia Southern +3 over 49 and a hook. Navy +8.5 over 52 and a hook. North Texas +11 under 64.5. Syracuse +14 under 45. Cal +14 over 55 points. San Diego State -8 over 41.5. LSU plus 10, under 59 and a hook. Michigan State minus 4.5, over 51. Tulsa minus 8.5, over 57. Give me the Yale Bulldogs plus the points when the line comes out against Yukon. I also like Missouri plus 8.5, over 60 and a hook. I guess that's a conditional bet. Anyway, Cincinnati minus 19.5, under 57 and a hook. Rutgers minus 1, over 47 points. Nebraska minus 3, under 48. Auburn plus 3.5, over 53. Buffalo minus 9, under 56.5. Oklahoma State plus 5.5, over 60 and a hook. Duke plus 11, under 68. Eastern Michigan plus 2.5, under 54.5 points. I also like Akron plus 20, over 53.5. I'm also leaning toward Troy minus 7, over 49 and a hook. Baylor minus 4.5, over 49. Iowa minus 11.5, under 43 and a hook. Kent State plus 7, under 64.5. Kentucky plus 24, over 44.5 points. I'm leaning toward Toledo, the Rockets minus 4.5, over 51. I also like the Virginia Tech Hokies plus 5 and the under 57 points. Give me Colorado minus 7, under 44.5. Northern Illinois minus 9, over 49 points. Fresno State minus 3.5, over 55 and a hook. UNC, the Tar Heels minus 7, under 62.5. UAB minus 16, under 43. Old Dominion plus 13, over 67.5. Texas Tech minus 16 and a hook, over 67. South Carolina minus 18.5, under 51. Texas San Antonio, that's right, UTSA minus 18.5, over 54 and a hook. Utah State minus 6, under 59. Mississippi State plus 17, under 57.5. Colorado State minus 10, under 44 and a hook. Liberty minus 32, under 56.5. Washington State plus 2, over 51 and a hook. TCU plus 11.5, over 65 points. Iowa State minus 6.5, under 52. I'm also going to lean toward Boston College plus 3, under 51. Tennessee plus 3, under 79.5. I'm also leaning toward Wisconsin minus 13, over 40.5 points. UCLA plus 2, under 53. Air Force plus 5, over 51. The Utep Miners plus 7, over 55. Arizona State minus 1, over 51. And before I give you my next and final free pick for the video, one final reminder that we are 3-0 in our last 3 NFL tier package picks on BrockPage.com. I'm going to lean toward Nevada minus 14 in the over 59.5. And with that, guys, now it's time for our shout out of the day. And that is going to go to Thomas Reason, who said the other day on my YouTube channel, "Go Blue. Keep me walking to that window, Brock. This is Big Dink Baby from Detroit." Of course, Thomas Reason, one of my favorite patrons on my website, and of course, one of my favorite viewers as well. Did not know they called you Big Dink, Thomas, but I like the nickname. I dig it. Now, is it Big Dink or is it Big Dink Baby? I don't know. But anyway, good to see you in the comments section representing Detroit. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on my website. Now, if you guys do end up getting a package here today on BrockPage.com, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on that page, you're going to get access to that content all the way through the end of October. I always tell folks the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Monday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at BrockPage.com.